So welcome. I'll be putting things periodically in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and present. So I'm Caitlin, and John is co-facilitating with me.
Hello.
Increasing student voice. So just say a little bit about myself, and then John can let you in on who he is. So I'm a special education teacher in the district, and I worked at El Cerrito High School for a while, and then I switched over to elementary, and I'm at Blue Pine Elementary, working with students with high functioning autism. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hi, my name is John Henry, or Mr. Evans to the kids, and I am an English teacher at Helms Middle School. And Caitlin and I are both TTLs as well. So it's our job to work out. I mean, your school should have a TTL, but just in case
We have a TTL friend in the room too.
Oh, we do? Oh, good,
Yep.
good. And basically it's our job to kind of help teachers figure out how to use technology in the classroom, which, you know, has become so much more urgent this year than it was in previous years. And so I'll say personally, I'm really excited to be helping you guys find your way during these difficult times. Cause I mean, we all need that guidance right now. And hopefully this session can do that for some of you.
Yes, TTL is tech lead.
Some of you. Go ahead.
So I'm going to start off with exactly what this session's about, and I'm going to launch a poll. So you'll see it pop up on your screen, and you'll go ahead and answer that question. And the way that I start my sessions with students is that we use these really cool zones of regulation. I made mine characters of Inside Out. Please don't get me sued for infringement. So they're fun, and I always ask kids what zone they're in because that helps me work with my students. So I'm waiting. We are almost ready. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because we have 95%. And to speed things along. So how comfortable are you with Zoom? I'm going to share these results with everyone. Now everyone can see this. We have one person who loves it and daydreams about settings. And then you can see that we have 45% or 10 participants who like it, 41% or 9 participants who think it's okay, and we have 2 participants or 9% that it's intimidating, but excited to learn. So one thing that I always do is I always try and frame my polls, if I'm doing it for feelings, and about framing it in a positive way so that students can be honest that it's intimidating or that they're not sure and they don't know. So just one way to incorporate polls at the very beginning of your class. Teachers also use it for attendance. So, and you'll get these results. So let's go ahead and dive in. So our agenda, we all sat and watched that live stream from Mr. Duffy, and then we did our attendance form. And I'm going to post that link in the chat at the very end of the meeting too, now that we've had some come in. And for right now, we're going into our interactive presentation, followed by our share out and Q&A, and then there'll be an evaluation. If you have questions, please type it in the chat. It's helpful if you chat most things to everyone, because John and I are going to switch off monitoring chat and presenting. So what we're talking about at the very beginning is polls. And so that's that when you are, when you've created your meeting and you are the host of the meeting, you see this fancy little polls button and down here, and you are able to click that and create polls. Now, the way that you have to set this up in settings, so you will not see that button if you haven't gone to your settings first and activated it. So, and this recording as well as a slideshow will be available to everyone after, so don't feel like you have to take notes while we're doing this. You're gonna go onto zoom.us, sign in with your district account, go to your settings, and you're gonna scroll all the way down underneath co-host to polling and make sure that this is turned on. And then from there, you're going to go to your meetings, and you are going to find the meeting that you want to have a poll in. And you scroll down again, and you get to add poll. And you can see I have a daily check-in question that I use with my students. You can add a ton of polls here, and you can reuse the polls, or you can delete them as you go, which is really helpful with a recurring meeting. This is what it looks like when you get to the poll section. You have your title of the poll, and you can type your question here. You can have single choice to where they can only click one, or you can have multiple choice where they can choose more than one answer. And you can have a bunch of different answer options. You don't have to fill all of those, but you have them there. So for instance, one that I've done with general education class is for a reading check-in. What will you use for reading today? And multiple, because kids might be using multiple things: Epic, Raz Kids, Books from Home, Overdrive, or Sora, something else. And that just gauges me, lets me know that they have reading. And then I kind of know what apps they're using more. So it helps me kind of collect data for what I should be like pushing my kids to, and just guides my own teaching. So daily check-in, I have two different ones of these. I have one that's done with zones of regulation, and one that's just like this, where it's happy, excited, nervous, tired, silly, upset. And what you do is that you can change from your different polls that you have set up by clicking this little button right here. You can go ahead and open a poll by clicking down here, and you can launch a poll by clicking launch. You can see that's where you drop down and you can select your poll. And I know this is a lot of buttons here, but we will send this out to you. You will have this information. Now, here is the fun part. So you've done a poll, but it's no use to you if you don't have the data to support that poll. And you have options to make polls anonymous, or you can have it collect the username. I have mine collect the username so that I can go back and see how engage my students and see where it's at. It's great for exit tickets, so you can really get that information. And the way that you do this is that you are going to go to report, find the meeting, and then you will go to go to meeting, and then it's going to automatically be selected registration report. Click it to poll report, and then you can enter your date or a date range and up to 1 month, and hit search, and then you hit generate, and you can generate that report. And so that way that you can gather that. And it's nice because in a way, when you're using it for exit tickets, you can then just pull that up and enter it into however you're grading your students. So that's where we're at. And then I also included in here some links on some ideas for polls, because often we want to incorporate these aspects into our classroom, but aren't really sure where to start. So this is grade levels from K to 12 on different icebreakers or fun ways to include polls, just to build up your skill and confidence and to build up your students' skill and confidence with polls. Okay. So John, do you want to have me keep sharing and going through, or do you want to switch?
Let me go ahead and share my screen, and I will pick up right where we left off. There we go. Okay, so I also, besides just talking about polls, we also are going to talk a little about nonverbal feedback. Now, of course, in nonverbal feedback, in person, as teachers, we rely on nonverbal feedback a lot, right? Okay, guys, did you get that? Thumbs up or down? Can't really do that so well. I mean, you can, but trying to scroll through and make sure that you catch every single student's face and whether they're doing a thumbs up or down is very difficult, and it's impossible if their cam is off, which is something that, at least at my school, we're still dealing with. Fortunately, Zoom has a great feature that I really, really love. Actually, the first time I used it this year, I had used Zoom before, and Zoom popped up, and my first thought was, where's the nonverbal feedback? I need that. And it turned out it was turned off in settings. So you need to make sure that your nonverbal feedback is turned on. So when you're setting up your meetings or when you're using the Zoom site, just go to the settings page. You just click settings on the left, and then there is a switch to turn on nonverbal feedback. So as long as that is turned on, you should be able to access nonverbal feedback during meetings. And it should be turned on for this meeting. So you all should actually be able to see it, but let me show you what you see and how you get there. And I'm actually gonna ask everyone to just go ahead and do that right now. Can everyone please click on the participants button? When you click on the participants button, you should see at the bottom of what comes up, you should see a list that looks a lot like this. There's the option to raise hand, to say yes or no. You can tell the presenter to go slower or go faster. And if you click the little three dots, I call that the caterpillar. If you click the caterpillar in the bottom right, that gives you even more options. Thumbs up or down, clapping hands, coffee cup means take a break, and the clock means away. And so these are just signals that your students can send you pretty much at any time. They can do it whenever they want. And there are times where you may prompt them to do it, right? That's the way I use them a lot in a lesson, is I'll say, okay, what do we think? Are we ready to move on? Yes or no? Can you click yes or no for me, please? And then students will know to click that yes or no button. And I think you all should be able to see the number of people who have said, can they see that, Miss Caitlin? Yeah? So the yeah?
So I know I can.
Yeah, well, you're the host, and I'm the host too. So I can actually see how many times people have clicked. Can I actually get a quick thumbs up? Can you see the number 3 displayed over the yes button? Thumbs up or down? Okay, so you guys can see that. Okay, great. So you can actually see how many students are clicking on those buttons, which again is super, super, super helpful. Okay, one thing that is not super, super helpful is when you say, okay, guys, go ahead and unclick that, and then none of them do. And then those just seem like they're up for the rest of the meetings, which is why you got to know about this button, which is something that you see. It looks almost exactly the same, except it's missing the raise hand button, because you as the teacher never need to raise your hand to give yourself permission to speak. And it's also, you've got this super, super important clear all button. So I'm actually let's just do a quick demonstration of what that looks like. Yep, so there's a no on there. And can you all go ahead and just do a thumbs up or down or the coffee or the away symbol, just so that we have, okay, great. I'm gonna ask you to stop in 3, 2, 1, perfect. And I'm gonna go ahead and click the clear all button, and now all of those symbols are cleared out, okay? The one symbol it doesn't clear out is the raise hand, but that's good, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first I wanna talk about why you might be inclined to use some of these. So I'm actually gonna go back a slide. And I just wanna talk about why you might be inclined to use some of these. So yes, no, it's pretty obvious. If you ask a yes or no question, you can give them a yes or no, right? Thumbs up or thumbs down, honestly, pretty much the same thing as yes, no, but students may be more used to responding with thumbs up or thumbs down. So personally, I find myself gravitating towards, okay, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Also, go slower and go faster. Obviously, if the students are getting it, you can prompt them, okay, if you feel like I'm really speeding along and you're totally lost, click on the go slower button. And if I see a high enough number appear over that go slower button, I'll know that I need to stop and repeat myself. Same thing with go faster. If I've repeated myself 3 times and I feel like you don't get it, but you feel like you get it, you can click on that go faster button. The real reason I wanted to talk about why you might use these, though, are for these few down here. Because the first time that I showed this to my staff, they said, why would our students ever need to use the away or the break button? Well, break you'd use if they feel like they need a break. But the away button, the students should never be away from their screen, right? Well, that's not strictly true, is it? Because in class, if a student needs to go to the locker, go to the bathroom, take care of something in the office, you know that they're not present anymore because they're not physically with you in the room, With Zoom, we don't have that luxury because if a student steps away from their computer, we don't know if maybe they're just off screen or, if their cam is off, we have no idea. And so if you call on them and they're not answering, you don't know whether it's because they're not there or because they've just chosen not to answer. So you might consider instructing them if they go to use the bathroom. You can just say you don't have to ask permission, just click that away button and then unclick it when you get back.
And John, I use this too, like when my students need to get materials. So if they forgot to have their materials next to them and they need to go run and grab their materials, they can just put that away button. I know that they're going to be right back. And this always reminds me of like back in the day with like AIM, where you would type to your friends like away from keyboard. And it's kind of like that same thing. So we just to let us know that they had to step away for a second, but that also tells me that they're engaged.
Yeah, that's a really great point. If they just leave and they don't click that away button, then that might be a bit of a red flag that they don't care whether they're away or not. But yeah, so just that away button is super helpful. I also find that some students don't feel comfortable stepping away from their keyboard unless the teacher knows. And so that's just a really unobtrusive way for them to give you a signal. There is one thing that I need to caution you about. When you ask the student to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, right? This thumbs up button is perfect for getting nonverbal feedback, okay? Because it shows you the number of thumbs up versus the number of thumbs down. It's perfect. But the problem is that if you've used the Zoom interface, you've probably noticed that there is also a reactions button down here, okay? And the reactions button, which thank you so much for modeling this, Miss Caitlin. In the old version of Zoom, it was only clapping hands and thumbs up. Zoom just released a couple of days ago a new update that adds these new emojis that you can use, which is kind of cool. So if you haven't updated the Zoom interface, you might consider doing that. But the big issue that I run into all the time is this thumbs up here. So if I tell my kids, do you get this? If you get this, give me a thumbs up. Half of them will use the nonverbal feedback thumb, and half of them will use the reaction thumb. The reactions thumbs are not counted. So you don't really have a way of seeing how many students are reacting. So it's just, there's really no cure for that. It's just that reaction is there and it's probably not going anywhere. And it's a really useful reaction to have, but if you want to make sure that students are using the nonverbal feedback thumbs up, thumbs down, just make sure to give them that instruction beforehand, okay?
Yeah, I like to tell my kids that the reactions are for when we're doing class presentations to support their peers, or to let me know when my jokes are funny.
Yeah, exactly. And now there's even a laugh emoji so that you can do that. Okay, as well as a party emoji if you want to celebrate. Those spontaneous celebrations are essential to any good class meeting. Can I actually ask you for some nonverbal feedback? Can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down in the nonverbal feedback? How are we doing? Are we understanding or are we falling behind? Okay, I see one reaction thumb. Let's make sure to use the nonverbal feedback thumb. Okay, I see one yes and 19 thumbs up, so that tells me that we are understanding it and it is good for me to move on. So the last thing I want to, well, not last thing, but the next thing that I really want to talk about is the use of the hand raise button. Now, when a student clicks the raise hand button, it's different than when they click a thumbs up or thumbs down or yes or no or break, okay? Because the raise hand button means that they want to talk. And so, yes, exactly. So Jeremiah just demonstrated raising hands. So just like with the other nonverbal feedback options, I can see, oops, I'm sorry, I lowered your hand. Can you go ahead and raise your hand again, Jeremiah? Thank you. I can see the icon on the participants list. But unlike with the rest of nonverbal feedback, I can also see it on their video, okay? And, so I can see it both places. Both places inform me that a student has something to say. And also, if my participants window is minimized, it's not open, If a student gives me a thumbs up or down or go slower or yes or no, if a student gives me one of those symbols and my participants menu is minimized, I won't get any notification. I have to open the participants menu. When a student raises their hand, though, a little notification appears that says so-and-so has raised their hand. Okay? The most important feature of it, though, you'll notice, and can everybody actually go ahead and, you know what? Let me actually just share my, there we go. Okay. So this is, oh, whoops. I'm sorry. No, y'all can't see this window.
No, it's just showing up as a black box.
Ah, man. Okay. What a pain. Well, that's fine.
This is the problem with teaching Zoom within Zoom.
I know, right? So usually it should, I don't know, weird. Must be because of the new, the update. Can I actually ask everyone to just open the participants list? And if you scroll down, you'll notice that there's an organization to it. Co-host and host are at the top. And then after that, all of the names are organized alphabetically. And yet you'll notice that Jeremiah's name is at the top. When a student raises their hand, it automatically moves their name to the top of the list, okay?
So Vanna, you're not on the top of the list. Would you mind raising your hand so that we can kind of show how that moves up? See, and then now Vanna's name popped up.
Excellent, thank you. And so, again, it's super, super helpful. I feel like I'm saying super, super a lot. That's annoying, I should stop. But I probably won't be able to. So the reason that that's so helpful is personally, when I teach, I uncheck the option for students to be able to unmute themselves. I just go to the security menu, or is it security? Yeah. So under security, there's an option for students to be able to unmute themselves. And I leave that checked at the beginning and end of the period when they just might want to chat or have random things to say. But during lesson time, I don't want them coming off mute and interrupting or coming off mute accidentally. So I go to the security button and I turn off unmute themselves option. And then when a student presses mute, it will say you cannot unmute yourself. But what the student can do is click the raise hand button. And then it's extremely easy for me to just hover right over their name and click the mute or unmute button so that I can hear them, okay? A lot of times I notice that when a student is finished sharing, they'll forget to lower their hand. That's why Zoom gives you the option either by hovering over their name in the participants list or by hovering over their image in the video, like their video, you actually will have the option to lower the hand for them, okay? Man, I think that was just about everything I wanted to say about nonverbal feedback. So I'm going to be on to chat in a moment. And I'm going to go ahead and show you right now. So I see Jeremiah's hand is up, and I'm wondering if Jeremiah has anything he wants to contribute. So did you have any questions?
No.
No, you're good? All right, cool.
Just practicing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. And it looks like he lowered his own hand, but if he hadn't, I would just click the lower hand button. Is there anybody who did have questions?
So I do see some questions, and actually we have a lot coming in. And so one of the questions that Brian had was, and it was more of just wondering if it has to do with having two screens up. He can't always see the, with our, on the participant list, the number of hands raised. Brian, do you mind unmuting yourself and kind of explaining that more?
Yeah, so normally like you'll get the little green pop-up that tells you the number of hands that are raised, but for some reason when I have two monitors, I don't always get that, so I have to actually look at the screen and count like how many have their hands up, and I don't know, maybe I don't know why it happens basically, because when I have one screen, I always get it.
Do you have, when you say raise hand?
Or I guess it'd be the reaction, not the reactions, the all the nonverbal feedback, right, Brian?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all, so the yes, no is giving you that issue as well?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you can also explain when you say second screen, are you talking about a second account or are you talking about literally a dual screen setup?
Like a second monitor.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I haven't used Zoom with a second monitor. Maybe you can speak to that, Ms. Caitlin?
I don't. I join with my phone as I as another participant, as a co-host, and I'm not sure. But Brian, I can forward that question on and try and get an answer.
Okay, it might just be like some hiccup and then future update will fix it or something, but I was just wondering.
Thanks, Brian. It's good to know that that's out there. And I wanted to answer Allison's question as well, which was about, isn't a whiteboard a way to respond non-verbally? Yes, it is, but you're not always sharing, you're not always using a whiteboard, right? So what Allison is referring to is I can go into my screen share and I can select whiteboard, and then it's basically just a white screen that I can, you know, draw on. And then a student, you know, if I were to say, okay, guys, you know, what do we think? Is this section true? Oh, my beautiful handwriting. Don't you just love it? Or false? And then I could ask students to go in and circle that. There's a way to turn on and off annotations. So that's actually a good point. It's just that when Zoom is talking about nonverbal feedback, it's referring specifically to those icons at the bottom. Whiteboard is a whole other option. And I think whiteboard is actually a different presentation right now, isn't it? I missed my whiteboard in DotCam is a presentation.
Yeah, that is another presentation, and that is covering that. And just so you guys know, all of these presentations are being recorded, and everyone will have access to all of these recordings. So if there's a session that you're like, oh, I was torn between this one and that one, you can definitely go watch that other session at a later time. With the infinite time that we all have right now.
Oh my gosh, so much time.
So yeah.
It looks like Jeremiah has an actual question. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on using more than one monitor for classes. I do that because I do PE and I have 53 kids in a class, so I'm looking at one group on one monitor and then another group on another monitor. And how I do that is on my Google Calendar, on my computer, my secondhand computer, the co-host one, if you will. I just click on that link, and it brings it up, and then I enter myself as a student, and then make myself again the co-host. So.
Yeah,
that's how I do that.
Go ahead.
And did you guys see that the new Zoom update that you can have more kids on your window now?
Yeah.
That you can now have, I think it's up to 50 maybe participants. Yeah, I'm getting some head nods. It's more. So you can see more kids. They get real small, but you can see them.
So what you're referring to, Jeremiah, is like joining from two separate computers,
right?
Which is also another way of doing it. Right. But there's also advantages to using one computer and just having two screens,
right?
Multi-monitor setup. So
I wish I had them.
yeah, I know. It's super helpful for screen share because you can share this screen but still be looking at the Zoom window on the other screen.
Well, and I'll say one more thing. It's nice, like if I'm sharing a video, I can see on the other computer if it's coming through okay. You know, because if I just have one computer, I don't know. It may look good to me, but it may be choppy somewhere else. So
I agree. That's my favorite way to use it. It's also nice when I'm sharing a video for me to have one computer where I'm sharing the video and another device where I'm actually just like looking at my participants, and which is helpful too. So Vanna asked how do you get to the whiteboard? You go to share screen, and from share screen you have an option to click whiteboard. I have a question about sharing a video. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
I just tried on Tuesday to share a video from YouTube, but it was embedded in my slides and none of my students could hear the audio.
Had you clicked the optimize for video?
I don't know. I don't know where that is.
I'm sorry to jump in there, but when you go to share, there is a checkbox that says optimize for video, which makes it lowers the video quality, but it makes it smoother. But if you're worried about sound specifically, there's a second checkbox that says share my computer sound.
So that's when I'm clicking share screen?
When you click share screen, look for the checkbox at the bottom that says share computer sound.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I really recommend the optimize button too. And when you do the optimize, it automatically clicks the share sound. Only because as a SPED teacher, I go into so many classrooms and I can tell who hasn't clicked optimize because the video shows up very differently and it's not the same experience.
Okay.
I see Victor's hand is raised.
Okay.
With that last question that was asked about the sound, I've tried it before, and it'll ask me to change the settings in my actual computer so that I can share my sound. Is that a thing, or?
You should only have to do that one time.
But what if I don't have the actual like credentials to, like, my computer is owned by the district, so I don't have the admin password to be able to change the settings on my computer.
Oh, so that's okay. I ran into this error actually just the other day. So some of our laptops, especially if you got one recently, something happened with configuring them. And for those types of settings, you should be able to enter your username. And I was trying to add Snap Camera because I want to teach with a cat on my head, and it wasn't working. And so you have to make an IT appointment for that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But they can handle it. So, and like it's like Caitlin said, if they can handle it once, then that's all you need.
Yeah, that was a great question.
But so these are great questions. Some of these though are there's just one more thing that I wanna talk about, which is actually using the chat. Chat is a kind of nonverbal feedback. I mean, it's still words, but now a student doesn't have to come off mute to say them. However, with that being said, there's also a lot of danger in that. I find that my students sometimes get distracted very, very easily in the chat. I was doing a read aloud the other day, and all of a sudden somebody mentioned their favorite sports player. And then the chat was just this long list of all their favorite sports players, and I'm in the middle of my read aloud. But the good news is it's very easy to change that. Okay, so when you open your chat window as the host, you can click on the caterpillar, the 3 dots in the top right of the chat box. Okay, or I think it's right above the chat box. Yeah, when you do, this is the menu. I'm sorry, my mouse is being weird. This is the menu that you see, and you can change what students are able to do. So, for example, participant can chat with everyone publicly and privately. A lot of us, just for security reasons, I think, do just choose not to do that, because then that means a student can chat with other students without you actually seeing what they're saying. Which, you know, if you feel like there's no risk of your student saying something they're not supposed to say to another student privately, then, you know, by all means, leave that on. But a lot of us also will just do, you can share with everyone publicly. So that means they can chat with the host privately, and they can chat with everyone publicly, but they can't chat with other participants privately. Or you can say, hey, I don't want anybody to see what you're saying except for me. And then you can say host only. And then they can chat with you privately. They can send you private messages, but they can't send messages that anyone else will see. And finally, there's the option to just have them chat with no one. If you're at a period where they really don't need to be using the chat, you can just turn it off. So that's actually what I did during my read aloud. When it totally went off the rails, I just said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to lock down the chat just until I'm done reading, and then I'll unlock it. And then so it's just click, and you choose no one, and then that's it. And then you can, so I think an important thing to know about this is it's not permanent, right? You can make the decision to change that setting within the meeting, right? So if you're at a point where you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, right now I don't want them to be chatting with everyone, then you can set it to host only or no one. And then if later you're saying, okay, well, now I want them all to type their responses in the chat, then you can switch that to everyone publicly. So that's something that I actually do a lot. Sometimes if I don't want to go through the hand raise thing, if it's just a super quick question, I'll say, okay, guys, you know, type it in the chat. What word did you see during your warm up? You know, and then they type that in the chat, and then we can respond to it. Another important thing to note is, and there actually is a reason I put this in here. So when a student chats you, either publicly or privately, you can always click on the student's name. When you click on their name, that sets your chat as a private chat to them. So I find that really helpful if I'm in the middle of something, or say they're all doing their do now, and I see a hand get raised, but it's just not an appropriate time for me to pause class and respond to it. Instead, I'll just, I can click on the student's name, or I can click the More button in the participants list and choose chat. And then I can just respond to them privately. I can say, hey, did you have a question? And then we can type back and forth. Okay. So the important thing with chat is to just think about, are we giving public feedback right now? Are we giving private feedback right now? If we were in person, would this be a moment where the student would call me over to their desk and ask me this question? Or would it be a moment where I would want it to be shared out with everyone? Okay, and so just really think about that difference. I find public chat to be most useful when you're doing those. You'll know those kind of lessons that I'm talking about, the ones where you'd say, okay, guys, shout it out. Like, what do we see here? Who's in this picture? Shout it out, right? And then they can just type it in the chat instead of you having to unmute everyone. And I think that's it for chat. I think that about sums it up. So I'm going to ask, too tired this Friday. I feel you, Vanna. Vanna. Where do I find these chat settings? Okay, great. So can you actually open up your chat box right now? And you should see a box that says to everyone. And to the right of that, there should be 3 dots. You should see the caterpillar. Okay. Now, for me, when I click on that caterpillar, this is the menu that appears. For you, it'll be different because you're a participant and not a host, but it should still be. Do you guys see that? Yeah? Okay, great.
No.
What? No caterpillar for you? Okay, well, there will be one when you're the host. And I wish I could share this interface with you. Not on the phone? Okay. Well, on your computer, you will see that in the chat box, and it's to the right of the to everyone dropdown. Ooh, I feel like whenever I start talking technology, I just totally nerd out and I explain things in a way that makes sense to me that might not make sense to everyone else. So I want to, I mean, there'll be more time for Q&A later, but I do want to ask if I've just confused anyone or if there's anybody that needs some clarification on chat or nonverbal feedback. And yeah. No, we're good?
So we can go ahead and let me go through, I'm gonna go through the chat and see if there's anything that we missed. Hi, my friends. I was so happy to see so many familiar faces on here, you guys. Thank you for joining. And so let's see. Oh, using polls for attendance. And I see the results percents for who not who surveyed. So you have to make sure that when you're doing your polls that you're not clicking anonymous. If you click anonymous, then it's just going to give you percentages and numbers, and it's not going to give you student names. Now, John, I don't know, all of my students go in as authenticated users. Does it collect it the same way if they're not? Does anyone know if they're not authenticated? I wonder if that's where there's a hang up, because at the elementary level, we often have parents who are just typing it in on their iPhones.
I could be wrong here, but I think if you have it set as not anonymous, it'll collect their names, but it'll just collect whatever name was the name that they chose for themselves. If they're not an authenticated user, then they could just rename themselves something else.
So Vanna, you and I can look at that at another time too, if you want to do some one-on-one together. But yeah, so I don't even have them like type in like saying like here or anything like that. I just do a feelings poll first thing at the beginning of the session. And the reason why I do this is because as a special education teacher, I have to document all of the minutes of which I've served students. And so by doing it that way, by just asking how they're feeling, not only am I able to gauge how they were feeling in that meeting for my own data collection, I also then have a list of all their names. You can also download the participant list. So that's an option too for attendance. And that's pretty easy. It's in the same settings when you go into reports. You can pull up the attendance list.
Do you think you could actually just share your screen and show them how to access that?
Yeah. Let me exit this. I'm just going to the Zoom website. I'm going to sign in. So I'm going to come down here to reports. And I want it for meetings. Oh, I guess I could go the other one too. So I could go to usage reports. And I can look at my, oh, some of these are staff meetings. I think the other one's more valuable. Oh, because I'm in this meeting. Let me go ahead and go to a different day. I'm not getting my reports that they're all missing. John, do you know what's happening to me?
They're not showing up in your report queue?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And
Well,
I've had meetings, so
that's weird.
yeah.
Click on the well, now
Oh, here we go. I found it. Sorry, your guys' faces were blocking it. So, which does happen all the time, and I feel ridiculous every time it happens because I should know. So you can see here that I have the duration, which helps me with recording how many minutes for my students, and I have my participants list, and so I can see all of the what they've typed in for their name. And so you can see on mine, because I'm elementary, that a lot of my kids are actually coming up under their parents, and I'm able to I know at this point who's who, which is helpful. But what you do, and I'm going to start over because I was so confused, is you go to reports, go to usage, and then you come over here and you can scroll over to participants, and then you click on that number. And that's going to get you that list. And I can actually see who was authenticated and who wasn't. It shows you that email. You can also change the date range by coming up here. So if I wanted to find, that much time, you're going to see all my meetings, and I can see how many people were in my meetings. And again, when you see small numbers, they're probably one-on-ones. Victor, question?
No, I want to add something to what you're saying. Can you click on the number again on the 24?
Yeah.
Or
I'll just click here. Let's see what this one is.
So if you also click to the top of that, if you click on show unique users on the left, that's gonna basically remove any repeated, because sometimes students will
Yeah.
log then log back in. If you click on that, it'll only give you the name of the student if it's repeated twice. So that in case there's repeated names, you don't have to have an extra name in the list.
And this one I love too, because it tells how many minutes each person was in the meeting. So I can see here that most, I was obviously on for longer, but I can see here that I had a student who dropped off after 1 minute. Or they weren't actually a student, they were doing me a favor. They were checking something for me, but I can see the participant dropped off after 1 minute. I can see that this student came in late. Well, I know they came in late, but they only were in for 7 minutes. So this is also for me as a special education teacher. This is something that I can use to show how long my students were participating. That's correct, Gail. So that when you click that, just like as it was saying, that you click the show unique users, if a student gets kicked out and comes back in, you're only going to see their name once, which is helpful.
And Zanat, the way that you avoid seeing repeats is you just click on show unique users. And, I'm going to go ahead and say best practice is going to be for attendance to use the usage report that Ms. Caitlin is showing you right now, because I actually my students I don't have that authenticated user option turned on, because my students can't seem to sign in right now for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And so I actually just downloaded a poll, and all of their usernames were guessed. So it's not going to give you the names if the student isn't signed into their account. So you will have to, for attendance, do it that way. But polls, it's still great for, for the data, for actually getting data.
Yeah.
And to that point, let me share. I think the most useful feature of polls is that if it's a recurring meeting,
Yes.
it's the poll, like it's a new poll every time. And you never need to remake it. And it shows up in every iteration of that meeting. So for me, I created a poll for all of my content classes that just says, did we meet our learning targets today? And the options are, we fully met our learning targets, we partially met our learning targets, we did not meet our learning targets. And it's great. At the end of every meeting, I just show the learning targets and I say, guys, did we meet these today or not? And then it's just polls, send, and the poll is already there waiting for me.
So John, I have a question. So
yeah.
Larry had asked in the chat earlier about, is there an easy way to copy a poll from one class to another class? So he's
Not
a high
as far
school
as I
teacher.
know.
Larry, are you high school or middle school right now? Madden.
High school.
Okay, so he's high school. So with the different block, I don't know if he just has to copy and paste it in for each meeting, or if there's a way for you to like Google Classroom where you can say reuse post.
Not as far as I know. Unfortunately, when you set up a meeting, you just have to redo it every time. To be perfectly honest, I think polls are an amazingly useful feature of Zoom, but they're implemented in just a terrible way. I think Zoom is still trying to finalize how to do, I don't think it really makes a lot of sense that you have to go to the Zoom platform to create, go to the Zoom website to create a poll, that you can't just create it right there on the Zoom platform. And so I think that implementation of it is a little bit clunky. One of the reasons being that you can't copy polls between meetings. But I don't know. I mean, give your feedback to Zoom. I think they need to hear that they got to work out their polls.
And I recently gave them feedback to see if they would add the option to add images to polls. So just for younger grades, if we're looking at TK and K and even first grade, if they would add images, that would be huge.
Mm-hmm. And so Brian, your question about non-scheduled meetings. So the deal is, I believe you can do a Zoom poll in a non-scheduled meeting, but you need to when you click on the polls button, it'll just say there's no poll available. And then you have to click that edit button in the top right and it'll take you to the Zoom platform. I think it might work then. It might not though. I could be wrong.
Oh, there's no polls button if it's not scheduled. And Brian, Brian's a TTL, so so with that being said, yeah, I know that this summer it might be something that's locked by our district.
Yeah.
Because when I was working for UC Berkeley this summer, I was actually able to create polls in non-scheduled meetings, but and it could have just been a Zoom update, but I haven't tried that, but that's good to know.
Yeah. Okay.
Send feedback. I mean, they're not as good as Google, where Google likes to implement anything we say, but maybe they'll get there because they're going to see how I think that people will use Zoom more and more in education, even for meetings and things like that.
I have given Google Classroom the feedback to allow us to schedule posts for multiple classes for years now, and they haven't done it yet. So
you gotta
I will support your claim that they're quick to respond to our feedback when they do that. With all of this being said, I think are we going to do processing rooms, Ms. Caitlin?
We can. I mean, we can see how everyone's feeling. So whatever everyone's feeling. If we want to go into smaller rooms and be able to talk about practice together, we can do some rooms, or if we want to talk about a whole group, we can take a poll. I need to recreate a new one.
Sure.
So John, if you want to carry us on while I create a new poll.
So we are coming down to the end of our time. We're getting close. We've got about 10 more minutes before we do our end of meeting evaluation. And And this is a good time for kind of processing because, you know, like I said, I think especially when I know as a TTL, like once I get going, it's just going to be informational nugget after informational nugget, and you can use some of them and you can't use some of them. And it might be a good idea for us to use some time to kind of process what we learned and think about how you're going to use what we talked about in this meeting today. And so the thought was that we would go into breakout rooms and we would share our thoughts on the question of what you learned and what questions you might still have. And it is a large group, I think. So yeah, we got 31. So I think breakout rooms might be a good idea, or we can do it here. So Ms. Caitlin in a moment is going to send out a poll about whether you want to just do processing right here, or if you want to do it in breakout rooms. Vanna, I do not, but if you want to create some, please send them to me and I will use them.
What was Vanna's question?
Do we have little videos for students that to learn these reactions and nonverbal tools? Like, is there, does Zoom or has anyone created? I'm sure someone created them.
Vanna, I can add that to my list. That might be something that I can create.
Okay, there you go. So Victor wants to share a whole class, it looks like. Vanna is applauding you.
Save. Zoom.
Okay. Reading on 5? 81%.
Well, we're over our 80%, which is our norm. So looks like we're processing whole group. I would love to hear from teachers what they've done with polls and what they're looking forward to doing.
And I would also love to hear if there's anything that really resonated with you in this meeting that you're like, yes, I definitely want to use that. And also if you've got any, you know, anything that like confused you and you still have some wonderings about.
Yes, Ms. Mangum, go ahead. Oh, you're muted. Go ahead and unmute. Oh, you're still unmuted. It didn't unmute you.
I'm sorry.
I made a shirt.
Hi. So when you send the polls about asking students about how they're feeling, and you want to know, you don't want that to be anonymous because you want to know how each student is doing. It's still anonymous to the students, but not to the teacher, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's a really key clarification. It's still anonymous to the teacher, but or to the group, but not the teacher can then pull that report.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've only done, hi, this is Vanna. I've only done 2, sorry, I have a sore throat too, sorry you guys. I've only done 2 polls. The first one was for us to vote on what we wanted to wear on Friday. The second second poll, I was trying to do like an exit ticket kind of thing, but I didn't know how to go back and see, you know, the report. So then I stopped using polls because I was like, I don't know who actually responded, so this was pointless. But I'm glad I learned that. So now I'm gonna start using more as exit tickets and for attendance and all of that.
Yay, thank you for sharing. Gail.
Hi. I know this is probably a silly question, but and of course no question is silly, but I feel silly. With Zoom, I don't set up meetings. I don't set up recurring meetings. It's just easier for me to click my link and then start letting kids in and then end it at the end. So I never set up the meetings. When I do, I can't go in any earlier than that. Anyway, it just seems more problematic when I, so to go to, and I've been able to set up the poll meetings, but I can only do one poll at a time. It won't let me do 2 polls if I want. That's my problem I've noticed when I just go in at the beginning of the period. I can get in to a poll the way that you described by going into poll, and then it takes me to the site and then I can do it. But then it won't let me, I've tried to edit it and it won't let me delete it. I mean, maybe it's changed, but it was fickle. Sorry, my document camera is broken, so I don't have a document camera right now.
So when you say it won't let you edit it, how do you mean? Do you mean it's just not visible, or what happens when it takes you to the Zoom website? Do you just not see it?
I go up there and I want to delete it so I could add another question, or I could go down. I know I could drop down and go to the second question. Sometimes it saves it, sometimes it doesn't. I know I need to work with it more, but I never have anybody to play with to work with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you actually raise a good point, and I don't know if this is going to help answer your question. Maybe Miss Caitlin has a better idea, but it is important to note that a poll can contain more than one question. So you can create a 2-question poll, which is very different than creating 2 polls. Because if you create 2 polls, then you have to send them out separately. If you create a 2-question poll, you send out the 1 poll, and they answer both questions at once. Yeah, so that is an important thing to recognize, to just make sure that you are clicking like add poll rather than add question. Because you can create more than 1 poll for a meeting. At least you should be able to. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Did that help?
I try it out, Gail, and then you can always send me an email if you need further assistance with it. We can figure it out.
I appreciate that. I really do, because I think it's a great tool. Absolutely fantastic. But doesn't, like you said, it's clunky and it's not seamless at all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I feel like that since spring, nothing's felt seamless to me.
That is so true.
Sonia, you said that, so with the away from computer button, it does not automatically stop your video. So the students would still have to stop their own video. Or, you know, some of my students use it and it's just, I see their window or whatever they're in front of. I would just set that norm. If you want them, if they're going to be a way to turn off their video, I would just set that norm with the class.
Because theoretically, you could have a student that wants their camera to still be on, but they just aren't there right then.
Yeah, I hope they're muted. That's it.
That is so true.
That's my new favorite superpower, though, is muting people. I don't know how you guys feel, but like, that's my new favorite. And yeah.
So William pointed out a question about engagement. And I just want to speak to that for a quick moment to just say, I think that that's one of the great things about really polls and nonverbal feedback is with Zoom, you so deeply run the risk of succumbing to that mentality of it feeling so impersonal, right? I'm talking to a bunch of boxes on a screen. I'm not talking to people. And if there's no way for them to engage, that reinforces it even more. It's just the same as them watching a YouTube video, and it doesn't make any difference that you're doing it live.
Right, it's almost like asynchronous, but synchronous.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But the fact that they can use the chat and raise hand function and nonverbal feedback to actually interact with you and make sure that your class is working to them makes it a lot more like a traditional class. And so I think that that's the important thing to remember, is that it really does help with engagement, and engagement is something that we need to get any way we can right now.
Right. I think that's a really key idea, John, is that like this is a way to get kids to be part of the meeting and to have some sort of autonomy over something. And you know, a lot of our kids feel like they've lost all of that, and this is a way for them to get some of that back, and in a way that's positive. So I see a question, can you unmute people? You have to ask to unmute. Unfortunately, that's the one, you can't just unmute them. And that's probably a positive thing, because if a student needs to mute for privacy reasons, we want them to be able to stay muted. Great question.
I think I could be, I think I might be wrong here, but I think that it might unmute them automatically if you muted them to begin with. I could be wrong there, but I think it's like if they're unmuted and then you mute them, then you can just unmute them.
I've tried that, it doesn't work.
Okay.
So,
well, you know,
yeah.
honestly, it's probably better that it doesn't, because if you unmute a student and the student's not ready for it.
Right.
Yeah.
So Alice brought up the chat is the chat as a place to respond non-verbally. Yes, but we're talking about like the spectrum of K through 12, and the chat isn't always the best function for that, and especially if we're looking at special education students who there might be a learning disability there. So if you're asking students to type something in, you might lose our EL students, and we might lose our SPED and EL students if we're always asking them to use chat. So these nonverbal features are a way for students across the spectrum, TK, K, first grade, second grade, students with cognitive disabilities, or students that are just learning English, to be able to give some feedback and to participate. The chat, I think the chat feature works really great for upper grades, but I just want to remind everyone there's some limitations.
Yeah, it's great for ELD. Personally, I like the yes, no buttons and thumbs up, thumbs down if I'm asking for confirmation. Like if I say, do we get this? Then the problem with they can chat me the word yes, but the problem is even on full screen on my other computer, the chat window only shows 8 responses at a time. So it suddenly looks like everybody said yes when really, like maybe 10% of your kids have said yes. And so that number feature is really helpful. Plus, it's just a really easy response option. You don't have to, it's I don't know. Sometimes even typing for kids can feel high stakes, and so just say click the button is really easy for them.
Yeah, I agree. Gail, you have your hand raised.
The question about chat is, does anybody find it difficult to be looking at a screen, but also to be looking over at the chat and then back to the screen? It takes a lot for me. It's almost impossible. And I know there's an easy way to increase the size on the wording, like the size of the font. How do you change the font size on the chat?
Is there a way to?
Yes, there is. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to hit your control button and your plus button on your keyboard.
While I'm in the chat?
While you're in the chat.
Okay.
And then if you want it smaller, control minus.
Okay. But it's tough for me to be focusing on drawing something, or let's say I'm annotating something on the screen, and then to be reading chats at the same time. I'm not that multitasker, You know
what, Gail? I am a multitasker, and I get headaches from doing that. It's the constant kind of shifting your focus. It gives me headaches. So I'm with you. It's not that's why I honestly, if I can avoid using chat as my main source of communication with students, I like the hand raise. I like the nonverbal reactions. I like polling, because I'm less likely to have repercussions for that.
Yeah. And I'll also just say that if I'm doing a screen share, one of the things I do, which is a real pain, but it makes interacting a lot easier, is I'll actually drag the chat box right into the center of the screen. So that way, if I'm not annotating at that exact moment, I'm looking at the chat window. And I mean, like I said, it's a real pain, because then you got to drag the chat window out of the way when you do want to use your screen. But, if you're thinking about your setup, that's just a possibility.
Yes, William brought up a good point that some teachers will pick a responsible student to monitor the chat. That is a great thing to do if you're opening chat up to everyone. So but if sometimes some classes we need to close off that chat, and so in that case that necessarily wouldn't work, but that's a great one. I did just put the Friday eval, and then I put in the attendance link again in the chat for everyone.
And can I also, Victor, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I had, first of all, a comment and then a question. I wanted to echo something that I think Brian said about the 2 monitors. I honestly recommend it to teachers to do. If you don't know how to do it, reach out to whoever is in charge of your tech team, or there's always ways to find out online too, but it allows you to be more intentional with your space that you have around, like in your screens. And then even if you are a multitasker, I feel like I am too, but I also find times where I'm like, where is everything, you know? So I recommend that you not only set up that multi-screen function, multi-monitor function, but that you play around with the setup or the placement of windows within your screen to where it feels natural to you during your meetings, so that you know where to send your eyes when you're checking the chatter or whatever it is. Just play around with it. If you do get to set it up, it's a great help to make you feel more like you know, you don't have to be like navigating all the windows at once. It's just it helps a lot.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that.
And then my comment or my question was about, I even wrote it down, but it has to do with authenticated users. And is there a reason why certain students are able to join in without like using their school email and others are not? Is that going to change, or is it still like in the works? What do you guys think about that?
So that's something that I've asked before to the district. So sometimes some districts are locking so that only authenticated users can join. And the answer that I've gotten is that can be a barrier for some students. And so in order to lower the barriers, it's not a requirement that they're authenticated. And especially, I don't know about the high school level anymore, but in elementary, we have a lot of kids who like they're joining like from a phone, and maybe they're joining from their parents' account, and their parents, you know, it might be their parents don't want to sign out of their account. But I've definitely made the request to have my students log in and to do it through, as a special education teacher, Clever isn't an option for me because I don't have a physical classroom. I'm pulling kids from other classrooms. So I can't use that Clever Zoom function. And so and I know that other like prep teachers have this same challenge too. So I think those were all things that were consideration. But if we could, it would be nice to have the authenticated user. It'd just be nice for the district to figure out how to get how to allow for service providers and prep teachers to have access to that Clever to do it.
Awesome, thank you.
This has been a great session. Miss Caitlin already put the eval link in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and display the URL on the screen now. And I would love it if you could take some time to fill out the Friday eval and let us know what you thought of this session, especially because I think this is the first time the district has presented on these functions, right?
We're the first.
You're the first.
We're the renegades.
You guys are the originators of this PD session. So when this is repeated in the future, we want to make sure that other people get everything right that we got right, and get everything right that we got wrong as well. And the only way is if we know which one each of those things is. So let's take some time to fill out that eval now. And then do we want to just say once you've taken the eval, you can take off, or?
Yep. Exactly. And I'm going to repost the attendance link too.
Right, please. Oh, that's a good question. Thank you, Zanan. So if you go into the Sketch, the place where you signed up, I have now added these slides as a PDF.
Can you repeat that, John? You added it where?
On the schedule, you know, where you actually signed up for the meeting.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So on that page is the presentation now, so you should be able to access it.
And thank you, you guys. We appreciate you guys being here, and you know, Fridays. I'm sure that especially like big shout out to all of our classroom teachers who coming from a high school environment going to elementary. I know that the workload at high school, it's tough. The number of essays that teachers read is like crazy high. So I appreciate you guys, and I see you, and I know we're all working so many extra hours and sacrificing a lot right now.
Caitlin, can I ask you another question? This is off topic though.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, in Google Classroom, you have an assignment. I'm asking this because you're a real techie, and so are you, John. I mean, both of you. This is for both of you. So I have an assignment, and you know, before you had a pile of papers, and you would mark with your pen which ones were wrong, and then you count them up, and okay, that's you know, 9 out of 20. Move on, right? Or whatever it was, or 18 out of 20. Now I can't mark anything. I'm scrolling. I've got, you know, 20 questions, but I have to mark them down on another. I can't mark the paper, obviously. Okay. Any suggestions?
So you can mark the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording now because I feel like we've gotten to that point.
Yeah, and does everybody have this link? Am I good to stop this share? Can you actually give me a yes, no? Love that. Yeah, we're good?
Good.
All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share.
Okay.